Alright, this is one funky chassis that's hopefully going to turn into one funky fly. Funky and effective. This is the first time I'm tying this. We'll see if it works. But in theory, it's going to be a changeable, basically shaky head, weedless. I've got a 1/16 ounce tungsten ball head jig. On the back end, I've tied in a loop to guide what's going to be the worm, which is going to be a furled CDC loop. And I'm going to tie the loop on this half a shank that I have modified by bending that little portion out to make it easier to clip in and out of the eye. When I dry fitted it, it worked a lot better on the 1/8. So yeah, we're gonna see how this does, because it doesn't leave a ton of room for to tie off to the shaky head, or I mean to the ball head. But this is more of a concept right now, and I don't know, I'm pretty optimistic. But then again, I get pretty manic when I have a new idea, so whether or not the optimism is founded is anyone's guess. Sorry, I was just trying to think of ways to get around that connection. I'm going to do what I originally intended on. So this loop idea I had first come up with as the original connection method for the worm chassis, if you will. So I was going to tie in, actually started to, and then ripped it all off, but tie in a piece of wire, form a vertical loop by building a thread dam and kind of parachute wraps to just create, basically mirroring the hook eye, just a vertical small eye of articulation wire. That will act as my connector, because as you saw, like, well, if the camera picked it up, there was barely any room for mono or fluoro. So just to make it usable, because at the end of the day, I want to try it, I'm going to go with that loop, because I think that'll work really well too. And I about messed up by forgetting this is backwards. I don't know if I'll tie it this way, but at least now I'll remember to have the tail going that direction at least. Ideally, I would want this connection joint to be much smaller, but A, I have zero fabricating tools, and B, there's probably other reasons. So I'm going to use this because this is what I've got, and it should be a pretty good basis, at least for future flies. Because if it works, I might just go through the effort to either source some clips or buy some, I think they're jewelry tools or whatever, those little wire kinkers, something like that. So that's enough about future potential flies. So for this fly, I am going to create a triple dubbing loop, and I want it pretty long because I'm going to double it over when it's after everything's spun up. Oof, I always forget about the camera when I do that. So just to rest my thread, I'm going to leave it over there and then forget it and have to cut it out with a razor. But that's a tomorrow problem. Yep. I'm so used to doing just a double dubbing loop that I did not do the triple like I said I needed to. So I'm going to add one more. There we go. Add one more loop. And now I'm going to spend the rest of the video worrying that knocked it out of focus. So I have got just about a gaggle of geese worth of CDC and assorted synthetics and naturals. So I'm going to insert that into the clip. The only reason I put it in a clip was to minimize goofs. I would usually just take it straight from the bag, pinch by pinch, putting it in the loop. And now I'm just going to even it all out, maybe stretch it out a little because that was a pretty dense clip. And so I've done flies like this, not at all like this, but the whole dubbing loop body, extended bodies, and there are a bunch of materials that work well. Fully Mills Voodoo Dub has worked really well. Sculpin wool. I think there's New Zealand Strike Indicator yarn. And all of those synthetics, I'll actually go through and go ahead and trim the taper. But with CDC, I don't know. That feels like blasphemy to go and cut those beautifully long, flowy fibers. So I'm not. And this is a worm, so I'm not necessarily looking for that perfect taper like I would if I was tying up like a bait fish style streamer. So I'm going to spin this more than I typically would, because when I fold it over, I'm going to furl it over on itself, and that's going to take a lot of this out, and you need a lot of tension to just, you're basically cutting the tension in half and still asking it to spin up. So you want a good bit of initial tension. Then just for security purpose, as well as to stiffen up the body, because even with the glue, it's gonna be really mobile, especially once it gets waterlogged. Because I've been fishing these bait fish patterns with similar constructions, and they've been proving to be pretty, they got moves, I'll just say that. So now I'm just going to lock off that end, remove the loop tool, replace it back from whence it came, and now I'm going to let it do its cordon thing. And I'm going to give it a little extra spin, and then a little extra, and then I'm just going to pull down on the whole loop, just putting it under tension, and this is just to let that glue really set throughout the loop. And that's it. That is the, well, that's not all, I don't think. Like I said, this is very much the first time I've tied this particular fly, so bear with me as I work out some of the kinks, as I did previously. So I am just going to add a touch more dubbing to fill out that shank, because honestly, like, by the time I add a wire loop, like, that worm's going to be sitting way back. And I mean, I don't want it to look like a hunk of steel with a worm on it. I want it to look like a worm with a hunk of steel on it. So there is a difference. So I'm just gonna add this one. I'm just doing in a split thread. I'm gonna throw in some super glue under it before I make these wraps, so I'm not worried about tensile strength as much. God, this bag had so much CDC in it not long ago. Alright, now I'm just gonna spread it out, but not too much because I don't have that much room to wrap. I'm gonna cord it up, and while it's cording up, just throw a touch of glue on these exposed thread wraps, and that's just gonna lock in this inherently fragile loop. So I'm just gonna take it back and then take it forward. Given that the turn, the kink on this loop is so drastic and tall, I'm not worried about leaving it exposed. Like, you're gonna find it when you want to go and change out the worm. But if it was smaller, I would want to leave the material back a bit just so you can just ease handling. So now I'm just gonna finish it. This is gonna be interesting. So tonight I have started a worm fly with a replaceable worm and did multiple versions of a new kind of weighting system where you can add or subtract weight to a fly just by removing it and retying it. So yeah, it's been an out there day. And now I'm just going to liberally glue the thread and then daintily apply a knot. And before all this dries, I'll wedge something in that ring to make sure nothing's like glued down, glued shut, because that would defeat the purpose of all of this. Now you just got a hookless fly. Alright, so I'm just going to take my bodkin. It's feeling kind of solid to me. Shoot. I think I am gonna have to get out a razor blade. Can't tell if I made a thread wrap or if I just have some material that got glued around the bend. I'm gonna quit fooling around and just cut it free. Yeah, that's not going back in the vise. I'm gonna try really hard not to slice this thread head off. Thankfully, this is a very dull razor blade. Honestly, the only reason I use it still, there we go, is because it's got like a couple nicks in the blade that act like kind of saw teeth. Other than that, that thing don't cut. Like, it's beyond the whole dangerously dull. It's now safely dull. That's probably not true, but that's what I do to justify some silly placements of my hand. Alright, now to properly create the chassis. See, if I was prepared for this, I would have had wire at the ready. Alright, so now I'm going to get my wire that was totally at the ready. And I am not going to fool around with that 6-aught Chartreuse. I am going to use some 3-aught black. This back end I tied in with GSP and glued the living heck out of it, so typically I wouldn't want to clamp a fly here that has been dressed, but I'm gonna listen to myself and not do that because it was not sitting right. Dang it. That's alright. Alrighty, so I am just going to fold the wire over so it's just forming a loop but Xing over those legs. And then I'm going to regret not cutting this longer. So I'm just going to put those legs, yeah, there we go. And now I'm going to pull it down. I'm going to leave it long against my better judgment, or against my lesser judgment, I should say. I wanted to create a nice pretty little micro ring, but something would mess up. I don't know what, but for some reason it would not work. I can feel it. And I can only feel it because I've messed up a couple other flies today by going shorter than I suspected I needed. So I want to take it right up to the bead. And now that it's wedged up there good, I'm going to just, well, I'm going to handle these first because they're getting annoying. So, I mean, when it comes to articulation wire, first of all, just a single layer of solid thread is enough, period. But when I'm dealing with something that is connecting, I would have cringed if I'd seen that, but I have 2 brand new pairs of these scissors, and these are like 3 years old as it is. But this is just holding that clip with 0 hook on it. So like, yeah, they may bite it, they may pull on it, but they aren't pulling with that kind of force that could potentially rip wire out from under thread wraps. So there's no need to get caught up with doubling it over and all that nonsense. Some good thread wraps, gonna be plenty. So, back to this thread dam. This is why I wanted to clamp the hook lower. Yeah, it's about to fly out. Alright, let's finish this sucker. Just gonna put a few parachute wraps. So, I mean, this definitely could have been smaller, but I would much rather say that than, for whatever reason, not be able to hook the fly in because I made it too small. And really now, I mean, the fly is gonna be, well, not really, but never mind. Just don't mind me. She's not pretty, but it's a functional chassis to start playing with a new concept, and that's all I was really after. Because this is the stuff you want to see. You want to see flies that I have no idea what I'm doing. I can't tell you how to tie this. You could tell me how to tie this just as well as I could tell you. We probably both tied the same amount. Alright, now I'm going to whip finish, give it a dry fit, and see how everything worked or did not work. This could either be really cool or a huge waste of time. Just gonna take a minute to pretty up my noodle. Just because I am anticipating that it's gonna work flawlessly and I wanna make sure it looks good. So when it comes to putting it in, what I figured I would have needed to do, go ahead and start it from the rear instead of hooking it and trying to pull it rearward. So let's see what the problems are going to be. I will say that shank, when I initially measured it, connected to the eye, it was just long enough to not reach the point, so it still allowed nothing to get in the way of any mouth pressure. However, this might pose some issue because of the flex in it. Like I was saying earlier, the gear used to connect all this stuff is definitely bigger than I'd like, at least for this size of a finesse worm. And really, I'm just walking through it myself out loud. I mean, all in all, like, it's got potential. I definitely could have dressed the hook a little better. Like, that looks god-awful. but I think the fish will be forgiving. So one thing I was assuming was just running it through the loop is not going to make it very weedless. It takes no pressure to knock it below the plane of that hook point. But what I was thinking might is, since the dubbing loop is so thick, I included so much material, I might just be able to, yeah, that's not bad. Again, I don't like this is messing a lot up. Like, it would be an amazing first fly if I got this right, but I get used to perfection if it happens too often, so it's not bad to keep me humble. But even as it is, like, I won't say it's weedless, and I won't say it's like equal to an exposed hook, because you've got this fairly rigid wire, so that's gonna keep it fairly outside of hook, snag points. And there is, like, you can catch the hook, but you can also, I don't know, I'm talking out of my rear end at this point. At this point, the only thing to do is fish it and go from there. So that is just a shaky head style fly. One other thing is, if you've never really messed with CDC, it's gonna float. Like, I can tell you with certainty. I've just fished so much CDC and tied with it in so many variety of flies. Like, it has amazing air holding abilities, and it's absolutely going to attempt to stand. Probably not enough to force the entire jig to stand vertical, or at least stand upright. But even if it's laying on the bottom, that free end of the dubbing rope will raise, and it will want to basically act like any other floating soft plastic. Any of your Z-Man or other forms of non-dense plastic materials. So that's enough of that, because like I said, I'm really just talking out of my rear end at this point. I just wanted to add that about CDC and it being an amazing, really the best material in fly tying. Last thing I'll say, so I really went to try to mirror the sprayed grass coloration. That's just a color of soft plastics I've always liked. It's just a purple, green, copper flash in a green pumpkin base. And so I think I got it pretty close with this whole blend of dubbing. And yeah, overall I'm pretty happy with it. It's definitely showing more potential than problems, and that's always a good sign. So I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you figured some problems out for me. And if so, tell me, please. Save me time. Yeah. You can view this and much more at my Instagram at Eric Clymore with a K. Eric with a K, not Clymore with a K. That'd be weird. And you can view my website at www.smallbatchbugs.com. COM stands for Combining Bass Gear Fishing and Fly Fishing. FYI. And other than that, just be cool, man.